Your mind never quiets, does it? Whenever you find yourself alone, whenever everything slows down even slightly, a voice begins to speak inside, constantly, without pause. You sometimes call it thought, sometimes analysis, but most often it is merely the echo of your ego, because your ego abhors silence. It despises emptiness, because it fears what it will see there. According to spiritual metaphysics, the heart does not speak. The heart only listens. What speaks is either the ego or a greater guidance. But whenever you hear something from within, you immediately cling to it, because no one questions the voices inside. We weigh everything that comes from outside, yet we accept every sentence from within as truth. Yet most often, that voice is merely your ego's fear, merely the traces of the past, merely the echo of anxieties about the future. Your mind speaks because something remains unaccepted. A wound still bleeds, a desire still lives, a fear still towers over you, and the more you stay silent, the louder that voice becomes, because your ego thinks that if you fall silent, it will die. So it keeps you occupied, makes you think, constructs narratives, makes you count possibilities. It never lets you rest in the present. It always sends you to the past or future. But in the present moment, there exists a greater presence. And when the ego recognizes it, it must withdraw. Yet it does not wish to. So it makes you speak, exhausts you, makes you forget. According to spiritual metaphysics, whenever the voice from within constricts you, know that its source is not a greater guidance, but your ego, because the voice of greater guidance does not constrict. It does not frighten. It only awakens. It shakes, but does not destroy. It speaks, but does not shout. And most often, it is heard within silence itself. This is why those close to truth become silent. They do not speak much, because they know that every word can be a veil, every interpretation can be a distance, and sometimes silence is the highest form of prayer. Yet people are not prepared for this, because silence is like standing face to face with a mirror. There you see yourself, alone, without excuse, without escape. There is an emptiness within you, an emptiness you cannot fill. That emptiness speaks. If there is no sound, you cannot bear it. So you play music, you check your phone, you write to someone. But truly, all your effort is to avoid hearing that emptiness. Yet that emptiness is the place where you meet your guide, because it does not come when everything is full. It manifests only in emptiness, because it cannot fit elsewhere. It appears only in a silent heart. According to spiritual metaphysics, the mind's silence is the heart's ability to listen. When you stop speaking, when not only your tongue but also your inner interpretations fall silent, that is when the voice of truth is heard. That voice is not a sentence. It is not counsel. Sometimes it is merely stillness. But that stillness is so profound that you would not find it in 1,000 books. And that moment is when true transformation begins, because now you do not speak. You only listen. To what? Everything. To a leaf falling, to a child's laughter, to the sound of wind. And in each of these, you seek its trace. Yet the mind refuses this, because the mind wants to control. It wants to make sense of everything. But meaning sometimes arrives in silence. You must feel, not explain. The mind speaks much because it has not surrendered. Every word is resistance. Every narrative is escape. Every calculation is fear. And all of these keep you far from truth. When the mind falls silent, what happens? You do not blame yourself. You do not elevate yourself either. You simply are, as you are, incomplete, seeking, silent. This is the moment when the heart is closest to a greater presence, because you no longer need to understand anything. You no longer need to solve anything. You simply stand, and that standing becomes your loudest voice. You say your mind never quiets. Perhaps a greater presence is trying to tell you this: just once, be silent, truly silent, and be alone with me. But you cannot hear that voice, because every moment a new scenario begins within you. Every moment a past unfolds. Every moment a future is drawn, and your heart, like an abandoned child in this chaos, waits. It waits for you to be silent a little, to listen a little, to understand a little. Yet you are always speaking, not only with your tongue, but from within. Yet that voice no longer belongs to you. That voice takes you away from yourself, because it no longer speaks of you. It speaks of your fears. What happens if one day you truly fall silent? At first, you feel uneasy, because your mind is not accustomed. An emptiness appears, and you mistake it for lack. But it is not lack. It is the threshold of divine proximity. If you can cross that threshold, everything changes. You change, because now it is not the speaking mind, but the listening heart that becomes. And a listening heart recognizes the voice of greater guidance, wordless, without echo, yet present. As long as your mind does not fall silent, you cannot hear anything completely, because it always intrudes. But one day, if you truly fall silent, you will discover that there is another presence speaking with you within. It has only been waiting for you to be silent, because that voice only opens in stillness. And when that voice comes, you no longer seek answers, because all your questions have already fallen silent. Have you ever truly experienced silence? Genuinely, without thinking anything, without planning, without forming sentences, just sitting and waiting. No sound arrives, yet peace spreads. If you have experienced such a moment, it was the first gift to you from a greater presence, because when the mind falls silent, the heart begins to hear. But what is heard is not a word. It is not counsel, not knowledge. It is a state, an approach, a touch. According to spiritual metaphysics, the heart hears but cannot express, because it is the essence of meaning. This is why the heart does not speak. It only turns toward. And when that turning begins, you wish to explain nothing, because you wish to witness more than to understand. A door opens within you. You do not know when it opened. You do not know how. But suddenly you understand. There is another presence speaking with you, greater than you, yet it is this that makes you yourself, what we call guidance. In the very center of silence, when the mind falls silent, the heart is no longer an empty space. It becomes a place of manifestation, and you are no longer empty. Yet you are not full either. You are simply open, and that openness fills according to how much you can receive. According to spiritual metaphysics, manifestation is as vast as the vessel. The more silent you are, the more you have opened, and the more you can hear. But if the mind intrudes, you immediately fill up. You immediately close that opening, because the mind's greatest desire is to explain everything in a single sentence. Yet a greater guidance is not a sentence. It is not a formula. It is not certainty, but a state of being. The mind's silence means your participation in that being. It means releasing control, releasing meaning, ceasing interpretation, not becoming like stone, but like water. Because stone protects itself. Water releases. It spreads everywhere, takes every shape. Yet its essence remains always the same. The heart becomes like this. Silence turns it into water, it flows, and guidance directs it wherever it wills. Where the mind falls silent, questions lose their meaning. You no longer ask why, no longer ask what will happen. You only observe, only notice, and this noticing is worship itself. According to spiritual metaphysics, the greatest worship is to remain conscious. Yet you reach that consciousness not through the mind, but through silence. When you fall silent, you hear. But this hearing is not with the ear. This hearing comes from the heart's depths. Suddenly, you know things. Yet that knowledge was not taught to you. You did not memorize it. You only felt it. That knowledge comes through the knowledge from the divine, and you enter there only through silence, not through words, not through reading, but through silence. With the mind silence, not only thoughts but desires also quiet. You no longer say, let it happen. You say, if it happens, beautiful. But if it does not, you do not lose its beauty. This is direct knowledge. This is beyond learning. According to spiritual metaphysics, learning speaks. Direct knowledge is silent. Because direct knowledge is not about the knower, but about being one with the known. You no longer carry knowledge. You have become the known. You are no longer the listener, but the heard. And in that state, speaking occurs only on behalf of a greater guidance, because now you are nothing. Only it exists. Where the mind falls silent, mercy is born toward yourself and toward others, because you no longer wish to correct anyone. You no longer wish to explain to anyone, because within everyone lies a path, and that path opens only through silence. Your explaining to someone is not what they need. Their silence is. This is why truth is open to everyone, yet invisible to everyone. When the mind falls silent, the heart becomes the mirror of truth. One who looks into it sees their own depth. Yet in that depth, there is nothing but a greater presence. You are also nothing. You have also become non-existent. Yet this non-existence differs from ceasing to be. This non-existence is truth itself, because when you disappear, it appears, and yourself dissolves into its unity. According to spiritual metaphysics, this state is called phauna, annihilation. Yet this non-existence is not a loss, but a union. The moment the mind falls silent is the moment that union begins. Because now your words have ended, and the words of greater guidance begin. Yet it does not speak. It simply is, and you become witness to its being, in every breath, every glance, every moment. And this witnessing is worship in its purest form. To say nothing, to ask for nothing, only to stand and observe. This is why, when the mind falls silent, the heart does not speak either. The heart, too, is silent. Yet this silence is not a closing, but an opening. You are no longer closed. Rather, you are open to everything, to every word, every state, every voice, because you no longer judge anything. You only recognize. In everything you recognize, you see it. And when you see it there, you need nothing else. When the mind falls silent, no one can give you anything, because you already have everything. So if one day you can truly fall silent and come to love that silence, know that you have opened to a greater guidance. And this opening can bring a lifetime of silence. Yet this silence is not muteness, but depth. One who looks at you senses a weight within you. Yet this weight is not burden. It is peace, because it is where the mind falls silent that reality begins. And there you are nothing, yet you are everything.